Welcome to Weekend Project. I'm Laura Lynn of the Mom and Pop Quilt Shop. Happy to see everybody here today. We're working on a super fun Scrappy project. It's called Herringbone, and this comes together really quite fast. You can cut your pieces quite large if you have the stash for it. So it's great for stash busting, great for Scrappy busting, and you can even do it on a two-tone scale. So this is what I'm going to show you here. There's only 30 pieces involved in this, and they are cut at 12.5 by 4.5, okay? So just as an example, you can see how that is right there. Got my peaks and stuff. And I think it would be neat to be able just to quilt it the way it is and then bind it on those peaks. Obviously flatten sides, but isn't that great? It's lovely. Okay, so there's the two-tone one, and of course you can mix and match that at all. You can make that's a start to like a table runner or a baby quilt or whatever. So that's the 12.5 by 4.5 cut. What I have here is a 3.5 by 9.5 cut, okay? And it's going to come together just as quickly. Of course, you can go a little bit smaller. You can also go a little bit bigger, depending on your stash. A two-tone one of this would be amazing. That's why I did that one there. All right, so we're going to start off with some pieces here. Okay, and how you want this to come together. I just kind of chopped up a bunch to go with this. I've already got some set aside, and we're going to add more to it, but I want to show you how the principle of it all comes together. And there's no Y seams involved at all, so this is really fun and easy to go. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to have one piece on your left-hand side and then one piece on your right, and then you want to make sure that the left, make sure I'm doing this correct. The left is butting up onto the right. So it's the short side of the left coming up to the wide side of the right. Okay. Now you can either put a pin in this if you want. You don't have to. Okay. I like putting pins in further down the line. So let's just move our little stash here so we have colors to choose from. And as you build this up, you're going to sew this line here. And then when you add your next piece, you're going to come and put it right up against here. You're going to sew all the way down till about an inch and a half away. It's just for ease of movement of getting the rest of the V shapes, the herringbone shapes together, that you'll need just a little extra flexibility. So don't come all the way to, don't go 1/4 inch. Give yourself about a good an inch and a half. So stop away from there, and then same as you proceed down the line. When the next piece that you add on to the long side, you're going to sew from the edge all the way down to about an inch and a half away, and then keep going as you build. The reason why you need that inch and a half is to be able to link to the next piece. Okay, so let's show you a few here, and then I'll show you how the pieces link together, because that's super easy and super fun. Okay, so first off, here. And then just with a 1/4 inch seam allowance, not allowing any extra space here. You just want to sew right to the edge. The same tip for this one. You just want to sew all the way when you're attaching the short side to the long side, okay? And then bring it back out. Let's do a little finger press. And then when you add the next piece, what I just do is I start my machine just about here and then go all the way to the end, okay? It's just easier to do that. So just pop it underneath the machine. Start about an inch and a half away. These are all partial seams. No Y seams, just partial seams. So you do part of the seam, and then as you add it together, you do another part of the seam. And that finishes it off lovely. Okay, so here we go. We'll just do a little finger press. And then add the next piece, and again, sewing from here to about an inch and a half away. And then you do that as many pieces that you need for your project, whether it's going to be a lap quilt, a table runner, even a king size quilt. You want to get, I'll show you what 16 pieces look like. Okay, I'm going to stop a little bit away. And you don't have to back stitch or anything like that. Okay. And then, I guess we can do it out here. We'll push it up there, put the thing to the side, and then grab another piece. Let's grab this pretty little flower fabric here. We'll just lay that up there. And again, starting about here, and then going all the way to the end. And you just keep building and building as many pieces as you need to complete your project, okay? And it's actually quite a fast quilt top or sewing piecing method to put together. Just give yourself that extra room instead of having such small pieces to kind of fiddle and faddle with. I prefer just a little bit extra. So give yourself an inch. It's all going to get sewn up in the end. So if you give yourself a little leeway, then it's easier to deal with. All right, let's pick another color. Let's do, where's the purple? There's the purple. Okay. Purple. Okay. And again, we're just sewing from the top to about here, or in retrospect, we're actually sewing from here right down to there. So. But you can flip it around if that makes it easier for you. Okay, so now that you know how you make your strips, it's the same way. You're just going to keep going and going and going and going, no matter how big or how small those pieces are that you're going to make, okay? So let's put that off to the side, and then I'll show you how we're going to add those pieces together. Okay, once you get 2 of those rows together, well, this is what 3 looks like, okay? All right, and I just love all the beautiful scrappy color, colorness of it, okay? So let's just move these guys off to the side here, okay? And I'll show you how they come together. Okay. Now, once you take your other pointed piece, actually, let's put it on the side. Okay. Other pointed piece that is the same length. I have 16 strips here, so this is what 16 strips or 16 pieces of fabric gives you. That's pretty good height. And then onto the table, looking at least like 35, 36 inches, okay? And then when you start to put them together, this is where it's kind of crucial. You want to make sure all your tops are ended up being similar to the same size. You don't want to shift it down because then you got a high peak and then a low peak. Okay, see, like a high peak and a low peak, you don't want that. So you want to make sure they're all coming to peak at the same spot. Okay, and then I found it easier, or easiest to do, is we're going to end up sewing these seams together, but you have to pick one first. So I chose for the small, the shorter piece to go against the long, okay? And that's why this comes into play, because we're going to end up having to sew these together, so that gives us room to fiddle. So we're going to sew here to here, here to here, here to here, here to here, and here to here as we go along. So it's easy for me to wrap my brain around it, is just to kind of flip and pin. And then if I can mentally think about it, I would just be like, okay, line the next one up and flip and so on and so forth. So line the next one up. Sorry, hold on. There we go. Let's start that over so you can actually see it. Okay, I didn't have that lined up for you so you could see it. Okay, so for you want to join your pieces together. I like putting it the short side to the long side. So I'm going to pin these guys, pin those guys, and then pin those guys, and just make my way all the way down. Okay. And of course you want to make sure your peaks are good. So it ends up being the short piece up to the long piece. Okay. And then when you move in the fabric, it's so easy sometimes just to flip back over to reset yourself on what has to get pinned. Like, okay, you know that one's got to get pinned. All right, so whether you're flipping it to the right or to the left, but you're just making sure that it's getting done. That one side is getting pinned. And you'll have a few to do, obviously. Okay. And of course, we want the red down to here. Put a pin in. Got this one down to this side. And I'll show you what it looks like before we sew it. Oops. Same way. Short side to the long side, but lining it up. We want to make sure we got a nice straight seam on that other side. Okay. Oh, that's going to go across straight. Okay, so here we go. That is how it's going to look. So once we get those ones sewn, then we can work on the other side. Okay, so let's go and sew those ones. So there's no Y seams involved in this. It's really easy. Just have to do some flipping and flopping to wrap your brain around it. And I'm still doing it because I'm still wrapping my brain around it. It's a process. But let's challenge ourselves, right? And you want to leave a little bit of a seam allowance to be able to put up to this piece right here, to the next piece that's hiding there. So, not hiding there, but it's there. And we know we're going to have to deal with it after. Okay. So there's that one. And it's easy just to kind of move these into position. Just by fiddling the fabric and making sure it's lying flat on the sewing table. Make it easier for you. Less fuss, less muss. And make sure you leave in a seam allowance, but coming all the way to the end on the other side. A lot of these fabrics have so many memories for me. Pajamas out of this cheetah fabric. Did one of my niece's quilts with this other little kind of Egyptian looking fabric. Lots of gold in it. Okay, make sure you're allowing for the seam allowance for the next side because you got to put those together. Okay, almost there. I love this because there's really only like 2 sides you end up trimming in the end. And it's at the end. So, like when you're all done. Make sure my fabric is laying straight there. Could have been a boo-boo. It could have been a seam ripper song there. Alright, just a couple more and then I'll show you what it looks like. And then you can see which other seam we have to do next. The one we're allowing for the seam allowance right now. Just coming in at least a 1/4 inch. Alright, and then lining this up. Now I'll show you what it looks like at the table here. Let me flip it all back out. Okay. And you can see how I have added that one side here. Okay, that one side. Now what we want to do is to put this side together. Okay. We want to put this, again, the short side to the long side. So pin that short side right there. We want to sew that seam down and then we'll end up sewing the other seam. So we want to make sure this stays all together as we work our way down. Okay. So that's the seam. Let's put it so the way you guys can see it properly here. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew this one and then we're going to sew this one. We're going to make sure these two are lined up properly. And then this one, and this one, and this one, and then the last one is just joining that little tiny section. So no Y seams, super fun, super easy. And this, of course, we're not allowing any seam allowance here. We want to make sure we're tidying it all the way up. Because we want that piece to lay nice and flat against that other long side. Okay, so there we go. We back over, taking the gap, lining it up with that fabric that we've just allowed for a little bit of seam allowance on. This is a great way to just use up some fabric you just didn't quite know what to do with. You have more than just some scraps, and you could make a half decent quilt with them, right? Put them all together. I just grabbed from a bunch of different buckets, and this is what I've made so far, and I'm loving it. Can't wait to finish it off, and it's going to go on one of the quilts here. Get the retreat all done. And then just move ourselves down the line as we go row by row by row, however many you have to do. And try to make sure you are keeping up with your edges are nice and square, your corners. Is that it? Oh, no, one more. Okay. And then it's just a tiny little one to seal it up. So really it's like a four seams. And one's partial. Okay, so here we'll go back to the table. Oops, sorry, I missed one. Here. Oopsies. Oopsies. Okay. So here we were. So we have sewn that seam together. Okay. Now this seam together, that seam, okay, now we have this one little tiny pocket that we just need to tidy up on all the little sections, okay? That's it. So make sure you're flipping it over to the other side, and then of course this should lay even and flat. Of course, and you're trying to want to push those rectangle fabrics to the dark side if you can. So just kind of hold it down, and that's it. Tidy up that little tiny hole, and then just work your way down the herringbone. And if you had proper seam allowances all the way, you shouldn't have any issues. Okay. And for such a beautiful effect, and not having to be frustrated by Y seams. I know some people say Y seams are super easy. To some they are, and to some they're not, and I've done them. They're not my favorite. If I can avoid them, I will avoid them. It's like parallel parking. If I don't have to, I don't want to. And then you're just going to keep tidying those up until it is finished, and then you just keep adding and adding and adding however many rows and however many squares you want to, or rectangles, to your quilt project. And in no time at all, you're going to have yourself something absolutely colorful and glorious. Oops, I missed one. It's okay. We do the one side and then we do the other. And it's one you can really just kind of zone out making as well, because you know what you got to do and how to get there. So, you know, once you got the one section on, you can just go with the other section. You know, it's not much really more complicated than that, of just getting those seams lined up, right? And the only trimming, which is my favorite, the only trimming is at the very end. you want to straight down the sides. I would keep the points, but you could knock off the points and make it different. Okay, so here we go. Here we go. Isn't that nice and adorable? Oh my goodness. So colorful and so beautiful. Amazing. Beautiful. Lots of peaches and oranges in there. Now you see it. And that is our weekend project. So hopefully this takes some inspiration about using some fabrics that you have in your collection and putting some good use to it, making something fun and unique for the kitchen table or your Thanksgiving table if you still have yet to celebrate that. Yeah, lovely, and good fun. Definitely using your bits and bobs that you have, putting them to good use and making something else different out of them. So thank you everybody for joining me today. Greatly appreciate you. Big hugs. We'll see you Saturday at 1 p.m. for our live stream. Take care.